Greetings everybody, this is Emily from Pages in Ink, and today I will be doing my very first book series discussion on the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. If you don't know anything about this series, I will not tell you. It is a sci-fi fantasy-ish kind of story that's kind of a crossover between Sailor Moon, Firefly, the sci-fi TV show series, and fairy tales. Because if you don't know, every book in the series is based on a fairy tale story. I believe except Ferris, which is kind of centered more on the backstory to a part of the story, and I will get to that. But, so in this video, I will be doing it in kind of two parts, but it's in one video, and the first part is the non-spoilery discussion-y part, and then the second part is the spoilery discussion-y part, where I kind of give like my thoughts as a whole about the series. So yeah, let's get started. I'm gonna start with Ferris just because it's the freshest in my mind. It was the last book I read. Ferris is about, it's Queen Levana's backstory. And if you don't know who Queen Levana is, she's the queen of the kingdom that is on the moon. The story, which I probably should have said before, takes place way in the future, called the Third Era, which takes place after the Fourth World War. We haven't even gotten to World War III, and they're already past the Fourth World War. So it's called the Third Era. The Third Era. I probably said Fourth Era, but I meant the Third Era, just in case. Anyway, so there is the Earthen Union, which is pretty much all the little continents and countries on the Earth, and then there's Luna, which is the kingdom on the moon that was started by Earthens who went up to the moon and started a colony, and then like the first ruler came out of the first person that had the ability to manipulate people's bioelectricity, which is kind of like their life energy, but not really, because there are people called shells who are Lunars who do not have the ability to manipulate bioelectricity, and as a result, they also can't be manipulated. So they probably have, well, apparently they don't have bioenergy, but they're alive, so it's not really the life energy, but that's kind of like what I attribute it to in a way of trying to explain it. But anyway, the Lunar ability is the ability to kind of trick, is to manipulate people's bioelectricity, but it's to trick them into thinking, feeling, smelling, into believing anything that the user wants, which can be really dangerous and really scary to think about when you're surrounded by people that can do that to you. On Luna, they create it mostly to create glamours, which if you don't know what glamours are, they're kind of like an outward appearance that isn't really there. Like in the Shadowhunter Chronicle things, for example, their glamour keeps them hidden from mundanes. In the Lunar Chronicles, they use it more of kind of like how I attribute it to the people in the capital who have like the crazy clothes and the crazy hair and the crazy everything. The people of Luna, especially in the capital, which is called Artemisia, they have kind of crazy glamours to kind of look like that. And a lot of their clothes actually aren't glamored. So a lot of their clothes are actually really crazy too. But anyway, so Levana's story in this, it's before the events of the Lunar Chronicles, but it kind of leads up to it. It's basically Levana's backstory. It involves Queen Channery, who's Levana's sister, and Levana's husband, Everett Hale, and her stepdaughter, Winter, who has her own book, and just her backstory. And the only thing that I can think when I read this, and I will just say this, it's not really a spoiler, but I think of the GIF from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I have not seen it, but I've seen the GIF everywhere, and it's nice motive, still murder. Because even with all the stuff that happens in her backstory, I feel like it doesn't justify her actions, and I will get to that eventually. Then we have Cinder, which is based on Cinderella, if you can't really tell. I hit myself in the face. Instead of a girl who is a slave in a house and just wants to go to the ball and meet the prince, Cinder is much more practical. She is a cyborg mechanic, meaning she's a cyborg who's a mechanic. Not that she works on cyborgs. I bet she could, though. Anyway, she's a cyborg mechanic who has been adopted by this family, and they don't treat her very well. They kind of use her as a slave. So there's, the parallels. And I guess I can get more into the parallels later. But I can just talk about this right now. So she is commissioned to repair an android for the Emperor's prince. Like, he's the prince, but it's not like kingdom, it's emperordom. It's called... Takes place in a place called the Eastern Commonwealth, which from what I gather is like Asia. And then I looked at a map, and apparently there's even some like of the Middle East, which I think is actually part of Africa. I'm probably really wrong and like ignorant, and I'm sorry. But anyway, Eastern Commonwealth is all of Asia, and is led by an emperor and an empress. And the prince comes and commissions Cinder to repair his android named Nancy, I believe, or Nincy or something like that. And also, there's a plague that's going on the earth called letumosis, which is like this deadly plague which, once people contract, don't survive. And there's this cyborg draft where they use cyborgs to test antibodies on for a cure. One of Cinder's stepsisters comes down with this disease, and she is volunteered by her stepmother to take part in the cyborg study in order to find a cure, hopefully in time to save her daughter, Cinder's stepsister. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I won't talk about because that's where it gets into the spoilers. The second book is based on Red Riding Hood. It's called Scarlet. The main character is a girl who lives on a farm and wears a red hoodie. Instead of a girl who's going through the woods to her grandmother's house to deliver treats and is almost eaten by a wolf, she is actually trying to find her grandmother, who has been kidnapped after the police decide that there's not much of a point in looking for her because they think she's crazy and just ran away. Along the way, she meets a man named, a boy. He's just a couple years older than her. But she meets him, and his name is Wolf, and he has kind of like wolfish qualities, and he is a street fighter who has this weird tattoo that says LPS and then some numbers. And he says something about, like, Lupine Special Operative or something like that, I believe, or loyal to the order. I don't remember what he was supposed to be a part of, but he's actually part of something else, which I won't talk about. So Scarlet covers Scarlet's journey looking for her grandmother. It also has a little bit of Cinder and a new character named Thorn, Carswell Thorn. And can't talk much about that because it kind of ruins the end to Cinder, and I won't do that to you because this is the non-spoilery part. Then we move on to a book based on Rapunzel, which is Cress. Instead of a girl living in a tower captured by a witch, she is the Queen's head programmer who's trapped in a satellite thanks to the head thaumaturge, I believe that's how you say it, Sybil Mira, who she calls Mistress Sybil. And she eventually is able to kind of live her dream in a way and go to Earth, and a bunch of stuff happens for that to happen, and I can't talk about very much of it because it interrupts the non-spoilery part. Just a quick thing that I didn't say. This takes place, which I know I said, in the Eastern Commonwealth. This takes place in France for the most part, which is part of the European Federation. This takes part mainly in the African Union. a lot of it's also in space. And this takes place on Luna. So you get kind of Earth territory, and then you also get Luna territory. So you get kind of more of a glimpse of the world as a whole in this way. And it's actually really interesting. Anyway, Winter is a Snow White retelling, where instead of Snow White is this beautiful, sweet, and kind girl, which she actually is. Winter is, but instead of just being like a girl, she's the Moon Princess who is able to, or she's not able to, because she doesn't. It's not that she can't, it's that she doesn't. And that's, she hasn't used her lunar gift. So she's kind of gone a little crazy. Because those that don't use their powers kind of go a little crazy. And hold on, my alarm is going off. So they go a little crazy. And she does. And then I have some issues with some of the stuff that's done with that. But anyway. So this is about Winter and her living up in Luna at the time that all the stuff in those books are going on. And it's really interesting because, like I said, you see a lot of Luna. And there's a lot more that happens, which I won't get into until the spoilery part because spoilers. But I will say that the fight gets to the moon. That's all I will say about that. So, like I said, you see the world as a whole. You meet a lot of awesome characters, a few I hadn't actually even mentioned. So in this book, we start with Cinder and the Prince Kai, who ends up becoming Emperor, which isn't really a spoiler because it's just not a plot twist. You know, his father had actually contracted litmosis and ends up dying and he becomes Emperor. So that's not really a spoiler because it happens pretty close to the beginning of the book. So it's not like it's not really even a plot twist. You just kind of have a feeling it's going to get to that point. There's also Contorin, which is Kai's father, Raikin, their advisor. There's Dr. Dimitri Erland, who is in charge of finding a cure. And there's Aiko, which I used to pronounce it Eiko, and then I realized it's probably Aiko, who is Cinder's family's android, and pretty much Cinder's best friend beyond one of the stepsisters. Then in Scarlet, we have Scarlet Benoit, we have Wolf, and we have Carswell Thorne. So, those are the new characters in this one. There's also a few side characters, like Emily from the tavern, and her father, and her grandmother, Michelle Benoit, and a thaumaturge named Jael, but they're not largely important, and then the ones that are only there for a brief period. Then in Cress, we only really have Cress, Sybil, Thorn, and then all the other characters previously stated. So there's not really many new. There are some new characters, but I can't really talk about them without spoiling anything. And then and then Cress, we meet Jason Clay, who is a guard for Sybil Mira, and he's also largely in Winter, because he is loyal to one person, and that is his princess, who is Winter. Yeah, so that's it for my non-spoilery part. It took me 14 minutes to do a non-spoilery part. So now we're going to get into the spoilery part. And I'm going to start with talking about characters, because when I talk about characters, it's going to get into some spoilery stuff, probably, maybe. So I'm going to start with like my least favorite to my most favorite, and then I'm going to talk about Levana separate, because I don't know where she stands. She's an excellent antagonist, but there's a lot of things that, you know, like the whole nice motive still murder kind of thing. It's just, a lot of her actions aren't really justified, so I don't really know where to go with that. But, so we're going to start with Jason Clay. It's not that he's my least favorite character. Like I don't like him at all. Okay, I like all the characters. He is the one I like the least, because he's just not very interesting, and he's an ass most of the time. Like, he spends most of Cress being a total douche. And even though he claims to be on their side, he kind of doesn't seem like it. And you really get a sense that he's probably going to turn on them the first chance he gets. And it just, of course, because this is the non-spoilery part, he does, or the spoilery part, he does at the very end of Cress. And you're just kind of like, why? And at some point, Cinder tells him something kind of personal, which in a way helps him. And you also find out in Winter that he's not really that big of a jerk. He just needed to get back to Winter, his princess. It was just kind of really weird. He's totally sweet toward Winter, though, and I definitely ship them because they're just really perfect and they're like childhood friends. But the most interesting thing about Jason is that before he became a guard, he wanted to be a doctor. And I'm like, I want to know more about that. Like, I don't know. He should have been, he at the end of Winter, if you haven't read Winter, you know, you should be careful. But at the end of Winter, he goes off with her to become like an ambassador kind of thing. And I'm like, you should have just, I don't know. He should be a doctor. He should go to school and be a doctor because that was his dream. And just because Levana got in his way, he shouldn't, let that hinder him. But that's the most interesting thing. I also feel like there could be a little more talk about that, about how like the guards don't really have a choice in being guards. They're just kind of picked to be guards. Anyway, my next least favorite is Scarlet because she's really arrogant and she's really rude. The way she treats Winter really gets on my nerves. And at one point she's like, my grandmother was crazy. Or people said my grandmother was crazy. But she treats Winter so badly. Every time Winter has like an episode where she starts to see things, Scarlet's like, oh god, not this again. And it's not necessarily like she should handle it like Jason, like, coddle her, because, some of the things she probably needs to get under control herself. But most of the time she's like, God, why don't you just use your thing? Why do you want to be like this? It's just kind of like, that's not really something you need to ask. You just kind of need to help. Like, make sure Winter knows that it's not real, get her attention, try to hold it. But a lot of times she calls her crazy just all the time. Winter admits that she's crazy. And I mean, I don't know. She's always like, yes, the walls are raining blood and, the world is ending. I just don't like the way she handles it. Anyway, she is really strong and she's really courageous though. There's this part where Winter and Scarlet go to try to recruit the Queen's like wolf soldiers, and Winter at some point starts to kind of shrivel like this is a bad idea, we're all gonna die. And Scarlet's like, no, this was a bad idea, but we're going to survive and I will help you. And I mean, that's awesome, but it's not enough for her to bump her up very high. She's also incredibly naive. She goes into this place that Wolf doesn't want to go to, but is only doing it because of her, for her. Because he knows once he goes back in there, he's not going to be who he was when he was with Scarlet. So she goes into that place thinking and believing everything she sees. When she sees, or when she hears that, like, Wolf was always an operative and that it was always her, she doesn't question it. She's like, yeah, he betrayed me. I'm like, can you think about it for a second? Like, just think about it for a second. And the part where she first sees her grandmother again, they're like, think about it. Can you really trust that this woman is your grandmother? There's a reason he doesn't want to be here. What makes you think you can trust them? If it was me, I probably would have questioned it, like, what was the thing you told me for my birthday when I was 5 years old or something? I don't know, something memorable that they wouldn't know. Especially because Michelle Benoit, when she was locked up, she didn't tell them anything, and they couldn't manipulate her. So they wouldn't even know what to say. Granted, that would probably close off the whole scene between them, but I was like, you're not gonna question it. That's really weird. Then there's Wolf. I loved Wolf and Scarlet. I loved him. But after Scarlet, his personality became like this. There's no growth. There's just this. The entire time. Because in Cress, Scarlet goes missing. And when Scarlet goes missing, he, like, dies inside, almost. He's just, like, a fraction of who he is. And in a way, I mean, it's cute, but it's also really irritating. At one point, he actually kind of seems to become himself again, and that's when he's fighting Cinder in a way of training her. But he just, I don't know, it's kind of like the reverse of the stereotype that a woman is nothing without her man. It's kind of like the man is nothing without his woman. And I really feel like because they are such strong characters, or Wolf was in Scarlet, they should be able to kind of be on their own without, like, Scarlet was able to be on her own. She was just hard as steel the whole time. Wolf was like this piece of clay that, you know, you could mold with your fingers and he'd stay in that shape because he just had no will without Scarlet. And I was like, you're a good character. Can't you be by yourself? I mean, I understand that he was worried for her and scared for her, but the way he wasn't helping the situation. And, you know, I felt like it was just really bad. But he's just, yeah, I'm just gonna move on. So then there's Cress. And Cress is like my middle favorite. And I think the reason, and I don't blame her for it, but when I think of Cress, because she's a Rapunzel retelling character thing, I think automatically of Rapunzel from Tangled. And she's, you know, kind of shy and naive, but she grows and kind of becomes this strong character. And to me, Cress didn't really grow to be a strong character. She just kind of learned to be a little stronger. Like, she went from being pretty much scared of her own shadow in a way, to being able to hold a gun up to somebody and threaten them. But she's, like, shaking the whole time. And, I don't know. She does have her moment of strength when she's in Jason's room and he's protecting her. Because she's like, I need to go see my friends. I need to help my friends. But at the same time, it was just kind of like, figure it out. I don't know. I don't know. She just didn't. I saw somewhere that somebody was like, I'm so proud of Cress. You know, she's so strong in Winter. And I'm reading Winter like, where's the part where Cress becomes a strong character? Because I'm just seeing her kind of coping with the situation and not so much just being strong. I could be wrong. It could be an unpopular opinion, but that's what I thought. Cress is also really useless in a fight. In the time that they spent leading up to this, not once did she ask anybody for any kind of combat advice. She knew she was going to be going somewhere where fighting was going to happen. She hadn't learned to wield the gun. She hadn't learned how to throw a punch. She hadn't learned to use her small size to her advantage. You know, so she's really useless in a fight. And I'm like, you need her for this. You should teach her how to fight. And she was useless, except for when it came to technology. I was like, if a guy, like, walks up to you and tries to take advantage of you, you're gonna be in trouble because you don't know how to defend yourself. I mean, I even thought, like, Thorn would teach her how to wield a gun, but he doesn't. And it's just kind of like, why? Then there's Aiko, who is sassy and really interesting because the reason Aiko is because her personality chip is flawed. So she's more human than android. Like, if you look at Aiko and you look at Nancy's all logic and kind of emotionless in a way, and Aiko's like sassy and sarcastic and funny, and she can be sad and worried and scared, and it's really interesting. She can also be a bit of a badass. She does a lot of fighting in Winter, and the funniest thing about it, though, is it's kind of like a superwoman, like a superhero who's a woman, like punching a bad guy and then like breaking a nail and like, ugh, I broke a nail, and then punches them again because they broke her nail. Like, she's just that kind of badass, you know? Like, at one point her arm is like completely, like the wires are all severed in her arm, it's just hanging limply, and she's still fighting. It's so awesome. And then next is Winter, and she's smart and interesting, and she seems to have more good moments around Jason than anybody else, and I don't really know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, like if it's believable or not, because I know there are people that, I mean, like when you have problems, like any kind of problems, health, mental, anything, you have your good days and you have your bad days. You have your good moments, you have your bad moments. You know, there's always a chance something can happen. But it just seems almost unrealistic. And I don't have really many problems, so I don't know if like another person can really help, or if it just seems like they help because you feel better most of the time around them, but you're still kind of struggling with it. But she seemed to like have very little illusions, like very little problems when she was around Jason, which is good, but to me it also kind of seemed a bit unrealistic. She was also incredibly naive, because the part where Levana is in the disguise of this old woman, and I honestly even think she had disguised herself as Jason, and she's like, your boyfriend left these candies for you, eat them and I will eat this one. It's like, you know where Jason is at this point. The plan was that he was going to go, I think, with Cinder. So why would he be in the lumber district with you and Scarlet when he's supposed to be out there and Cinder is nowhere to be seen? I would think that if she saw Jason, Jason would be with Cinder, and whoever else was supposed to be with Cinder, I don't remember who it was supposed to be. But it was just kind of like, why would you believe this? And I think it was just because it goes along with the fairy tale. You know, the old woman tricks Snow White into biting an apple that's poison. The little candy was poison, and Levana ate the one that probably either wasn't poisoned or had like, or she had drank an antidote beforehand or something. I don't know. I was just kind of like, you're surrounded by Lunars who can manipulate with glamours. Like, how are you going to believe that A, that was Jason, and B, that this woman can be trusted with her candies when she's living in a lumber district where, you know, she can't do any work if she's that old and frail looking. Oh, it made me mad. Right, and then there's Kai, who's sweet and smart and super brave because he goes along with a lot of the stuff that is part of the plan. He has to improvise quite a bit when Levana kind of figures out his plans. But, you know, he's willing to do everything for his empire, for his kingdom, including marry a woman that he knows will kill him, all for an antidote and for a ceasefire, even though they're not firing. You know, he's willing to put all this at risk, himself, everything, in order to protect his kingdom, and that's something that, you know, is really admirable, and he really cares for Cinder. And at first, I was kind of irritated with him because he just automatically believed that she was, you know, manipulating him the entire time, because once he found out that she was Lunar, he's like, it's all been a lie. And I'm just kind of like, dude, have you ever seen that shimmer before? Have you ever seen that glamour before? Like, do you think that she was really manipulating you the whole time? And at some point, Con Torin is even like, dude, if you really didn't like her, you wouldn't like her when she's not with you. So, I was just kind of annoyed, but, whatever. Yeah. Then there's Thorn. Who can dislike Thorn? He really reminds me of Flynn Rider, because he's that confident, attractive, funny, you know, kind of guy who makes light of a dangerous situation because it's not cool to be scared. And his thing with Cress kind of makes me mad, because he doesn't want to hurt her because he knows he's not a great person, but he doesn't try to change it at first. He's just kind of like, she doesn't love me anymore. I totally can't tell, even though she doesn't look at me, or I don't know. It was weird. I also like how he kind of uses his looks and his confidence to his advantage. He doesn't show his fear, really. He does most of the time, but he also kind of makes it lighthearted in a way. He knows he's going to die, probably, but he's going to make a joke. Or he promises Cress that he's going to kiss her when it looks like she's going to be dying. And at one point, he ends up kissing her because he thought they were going to die. But he was just a really great character, and I really enjoy his character. Then my favorite character is Cinder. And there are people that don't like Cinder, and I don't understand why. Because she's smart and selfless. She's giving up any chance she has to be free and live on her own, away from her step family, in a whole different country. She's risking all of that for a revolution, to change the world. And she's, willing to risk her life, and she's labeled a fugitive, and she's on the run all the time, and she's willing to risk all of this to keep everybody on Earth safe. And she's also really badass. At some point she ends up killing people and doesn't even blink. And not necessarily because she doesn't feel anything about it, she's just kind of, it's not as important in what she needs to be focused on doing. Part of the revolution, when they attack Artemisia, and Cinder's going toward the castle, and the thaumaturges are controlling the guards, and then there's also the lupine soldiers, and she's killing some people, and there's other times too, I'm pretty sure, that she ends up killing people. And I was always afraid that people were the people of Luna and the people on Earth were she's a murderer, she's gonna kill everybody to get the throne. But most people supported her, and I'm this is good, this is what needs to be happening. Because she doesn't want to kill people. She wanted to do it peacefully and tried her best to do so. But when the people that she's trying to save attack her, and most of them are being controlled, she knows that if she doesn't kill them, they will kill her, and it will all be over. There'd be no point. So, she's not a bad person. She can be pretty badass, and she's really selfless. And then there's Levana, who, like I said, I don't know where she is on my list. In Ferris, you learn a lot. You learn that her and Channery weren't really doted on or loved by their parents. They were just kind of there. Except Channery seems really spoiled, so I kind of feel like Levana was kind of cast in the shadow where nobody really seemed to pay attention to her, and Channery was held up high on a pedestal and showered with stuff. Because Channery was so confident in who she was, and Levana, of course, wasn't, but I feel like it wasn't just because of what was underneath. I really feel like she felt she couldn't be loved until she believes that one of her guards, Everett Hale, who is not so much, but older than her and is already married, and at her parents' funeral, she meets his wife, and she's automatically jealous, because she realizes that even though mistresses is something that happens in the aristocracy, he was committed to his wife, and he was never going to leave her. And then she ends up dying in childbirth, giving birth to Winter, and Levana, almost immediate, is he'll get over her. He'll realize how much he loves me. He won't even know that she's missing. And she even starts to, wear Solstice's glamour. Solstice is his dead wife. She starts to look like her. And I'm what are you doing? And then she starts to manipulate him because he tries to tell her, look, I don't have feelings for you. I was trying to be nice. And she's like, no, you love me. You're the only person that ever cared. You're the only person that gave me a present, so you have to love me. It's like she doesn't understand that caring about somebody and loving somebody are two different things. You know? I can care about people that I give money to, you know, but I don't love them. I wouldn't give my life for them. I will help them. I care about them. I want them to be okay. But, you know, I don't love them. I don't need them in my life. I don't need to risk my life for them or anything. Like, granted, his job is a guard, so he kind of needs to risk his life for her anyway. But just because he cares about her doesn't mean that he loves her in the way that she believes. But she starts to manipulate him. And, you know, their marriage goes on for 10 years before she has him killed. But it's not because she doesn't love him anymore. But at one point he's even like, you know, you haven't shown me your glamour. I don't know what's underneath. I don't know if I can even trust you. You know, 10 years and you've manipulated me. I don't even know how I feel about you. And at one point she even shows him what's underneath his glamour. And he's like, I wish you had showed me this before because it would have changed things. I would have been able to trust you. He doesn't really say that, you know, he could have come to love her, but he does say it would have probably changed things and now they would never know. And of course this makes Levana upset and she runs off. Then she sees that the biological weapon of Lutmosis, whatever it is working, and it kills the Empress. And she sees that now, and at this point, Selene is born. You know, Winter's there, and Channery's dead because she had contracted Regolith poisoning, which was really weird, but okay. And so Channery's dead. Selena's supposedly dead. At this point, Levana has already tried to kill her. And I will explain why she justifies that in a second, which is actually the same reason that she justifies killing her husband, or having her husband killed. She believes it's good for Luna. Like, she believes she's the most fit queen, so she kills Selene in the best way that she can. She tries to be merciful by setting the child on fire. Like, she manipulates the maid into setting the room on fire by putting the candle down in the playhouse, and the room catches on fire. And I'm like, how do you justify killing a child by saying, I am the best ruler? You will rule for 12 years. You know, maybe somehow they'll decide that Cinder shouldn't be queen and that you were doing such a good job. Like, you don't have to kill a child. You just don't. You don't have to kill the child. But she justifies it that way. And the same thing with Everett Hale. She realizes, I can't be... Or Channery had talked about becoming the Empress of the Commonwealth and creating the, like the bridge between the Earth and Luna, because Luna's resources are running low. They can only grow so much. And at one point, they can even grow enough because of, Levana's, production input thing that they told her was going to run out, and she didn't listen. Lost my train of thought. So when she sees that the Empress of the Commonwealth has died from Litmosis, she realizes that because Channery had mentioned it, she's like, I could be Empress. But she can't because she's married to Everett Hale. So she has him killed in order to marry. Her plan is to marry Emperor Riken, which doesn't work out obviously because in Lunar Chronicles she's trying to marry Kai. So she has him killed, and that's kind of where it ends. But I'm just kind of like, so a lot of her problem is because she won't let people see her glamour, so they don't know that they can trust her. Cinder doesn't try to glamour people because she knows it's a lie, and also it's kind of like her symbol in a way. So people see her and they automatically trust her, which is a little naive, but at the same time, you know, there's kind of evidence that she is who she says she is beyond like DNA. Because I think you could still see like some of the burn marks around her mechanical parts from where they had to like amputate and then put on the limbs. Anyway, so, you know, and even Everett says at one point, he's like, Levana, if you showed the people what you are under your glamour, they might trust you. I might trust you. And she's like, no, I just can't. I can't. I'm too ugly. Nobody will love me. There are a lot of people that can actually be really understanding if you show them what's underneath, what's inside, because you're being truthful. You're not hiding anything from them. So he was right in a way, because that's part of why people didn't trust her. Yeah, so that's all I can really think of for my discussion. It was probably really weak, but it is my first, so maybe it will get better with time. I'm currently reading Spinning Starlight by R.C. Lewis, which isn't like the second book in a series, it's just like her second book in this kind of sci-fi fairy retelling, and this is a retelling of a story by Hans Christian Andersen called The Wild Swans. So far, I'm not as impressed as I was with Stitching Snow, but I'm still going to give it a chance before I decide to nix it. I also read lately something that I think you guys would be interested in, at least people that like strong female characters. I read this graphic novel called In Real Life, and in this graphic novel there's a girl who enters this MMORPG and plays it with a person named Sarge, and they go after gold farmers because Sarge talks her into believing that this is a good idea. And turns out that a lot of the gold farmers didn't have any choice, and she tries to help them but ends up getting put on probation, and her mom takes away her electronic devices. And I'm really annoyed because I didn't realize that the story was written by a man, and this is Read Women December. So I was like, darn. But I'm going to try to read women from here on out. And the illustrator was a woman, so I mean, that counts. But yeah, so that's what I've been reading and such. And it's been 42 minutes. I am sorry for talking so much about the series, but I really enjoy this series. I love fairy tale retellings in general, and I like sci-fi stories, and the characters are all great, even with some of the things that I didn't like that annoyed me. The plot was really good. There were things that surprised me, there were things that didn't surprise me, but there's gotta be a balance. I fell in love with Cinder, and I got Scarlet and Crest, and I read them all, and I was so excited for Winter, and I read Winter, and it didn't disappoint. It was a great finale, and Fairest I had trouble getting through because it was about Levana, and I could care less because I don't like her very much, but you know what can you do? It really was an interesting read, though, because you kind of got more of a backstory that's talked about within the book series. So yeah, that's about all I got. So I wish you guys happy reading, and my coming videos include my Owl Crate unboxing, which is on its way and should be here by the 22nd, but I think I'm going to save it for Christmas because, I mean, what's more fun than unboxing a box on Christmas in front of cameras? Like, that's gotta be awesome. I'm excited, though. There's supposed to be a book candle in there, and if you probably can't tell, I have 2 candles here. I have like 4 candles on the top of my bookshelf. I like candles, so I'm excited to have my room smell like a candle from books. I'm also really excited for January because the box is magic and the picture for it is Harry Potter, so I'm hoping there's going to be some Potter in there, and there's probably going to be some darker shade of magic stuff in there, and I probably should read that. I don't really know what else is going to be in there, but I'm excited. Another video that you can look forward to seeing is sadly not a book talk. I really need to get back into the book talks, but I don't want to do any book talks on my library books because I like binge borrow from the library. So I have like 6 right now from the library, 6 or 7, and if I did a book talk for every single one of them, you'd probably see like 4 a week, and I don't want to like throw all of that at you, so I'm not going to be doing that. So I'm going to try to get through those. I may do a library book haul video to show what I got from the library, but I don't think so because there are a couple male authors that I'm probably not going to read until January. And there should also be a Christmas book haul because I'm getting at least 5 books from my boyfriend for Christmas. Or 5, maybe, no, I think it was 4. There's 4 books for my boyfriend for Christmas because it was like $40 worth of books. Because I got him a $40 worth book thing. So, yeah, that's about all I can think of. So I will see you guys next time. Look forward to my videos, and I will look forward to seeing you all. If you have any thoughts about the Lunar Chronicles, things you think I can improve, the books in general, something you thought of while watching the video, just go ahead and comment below. Again, I'm sorry this video took for freaking ever, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!